Hello and welcome to this week's live Gillian-Baker. Hey guys, so sorry that I'm running a little late. I apologize. Hope you can jump on here live now that I'm here. And when you do come on live, make sure you say hi in the comments. Tell us what you're drinking. Today we are going to be talking about here comes Jane Eyre. Today we're going to be talking about the research that I had to do for my second book, A Time to Kill. And I decided to do this because last week's video was so popular and we had a lot of fun with it. So I decided to do the research, talk about the research in each one of the books because you guys seem to really enjoy that. So without further ado, we'll get started. I have to admit I don't have tea today because, I'm already running late. I didn't have time to make tea, but I do have coffee. So, and my ever-present water bottle full of nice icy water. So today I was going to start first. Sorry, I had to get my sticky note that has my notes on it. The first thing that I had to do was discover if it was even possible to burn up a body in a pottery kiln. So I told you in an earlier video that I got the idea for A Time to Kill murder, one of the murders, there's two actually in this one, when I was a potter, when I was at a pottery studio all the time, and I did it as a hobby, and I did sell quite a bit of it as well, going to festivals and that sort of thing. And the wire cutter is just, clay cutter is so perfect for a murder to garrote someone with, but I had to find out a couple of things to make sure that it would even work. So I had to find out how deeply it would go into, because the wire is really sharp. So I had to figure out how deeply that would go into somebody's neck and how much blood there would be, because cozy mystery fans don't like a lot of gory, bloody stuff. But I also used a little bit of blood that remained as a clue for Jade. So I needed a little bit of blood, but not too much blood. So, but I figured out pretty quickly that that was going to work. The next step was I really, really, really wanted to burn up a body in a pottery kiln. They get extremely hot, and I can't remember the numbers right now, but I had to do a lot of research to see if it was even possible to burn up a body, to hide the evidence in a kiln. And it is. Luckily for me, and I even found an article where talking about a guy in California who actually did that. He actually burned up some bodies in a pottery kiln, but he got caught. So you'll have to read the book to find out all the details of that, because I do include the basic story in the book. Jade comes across that information. So that was tough, though. I had to find several different resources. I had to first understand how hot a crematorium even gets. How hot does it have to get to burn up a body, and how much of it remains? So how much, do the bones and the teeth remain? If you burn it long enough, will those also melt down or whatever? And basically I learned that the subcutaneous fat that we hold on our bodies basically becomes a candle for the fire, and it burns from the inside out, you know, so maybe more information than what you wanted. But anyway, that took a while because I wanted to find that information in several locations to make sure that I was getting the right information, because I didn't want it to be you know, I didn't want to just try and make something up that didn't make any sense. Really important, and luckily for me, it worked out. I also needed to find a good date rape drug, and I've had to research that a few different times. And the one that really worked this time was ketamine. And the reason that that works out so well is because it's mostly used by vets for horses, mostly. And since we're in Wyoming, there are a lot of horses, and the people all around Aspen Falls, a lot of them are ranchers, and so they're going to have vets out to their house all the time, and they're going to have horses that are going to need ketamine to have small surgeries or whatever. So once I found that, then I had to do, you know, more research to find out exactly what the side effects were of ketamine, how long it took to work, and how long it lasted, which, by the way, is not very long. So if you're going to use it for something nefarious, you need to act quickly. Just saying. I also, you know, the problem with poison is that a lot of times you come up with this great poison, you know, you do some searching, but then it tastes terrible. A lot of times it's really bitter or sickening sweet. And so what can you add it to that's not, that somebody's going to ingest it willingly and not realize it? That's the tricky part with poison. Just so you know, if you're going to write a book, wink, wink, don't, you know, you're going to have to do your, you know, due diligence with any kind of drug. It's also used as a street drug, as a date rape drug, often, or just as a street drug. So luckily, Ellie is able to help Jade out with a little bit of information about that, because she had heard that it was used. You know, it's like, where do you find something like that? And Jade was it was easy for Jade to find out that information once I knew it. I also needed to find an object that was in a barn, that often was in a barn, that someone could either use as a murder weapon or use as a way to threaten someone. And I knew growing up, I grew up on a farm in Indiana, and I knew that we didn't have hay hooks, but I know that I had seen those like hanging up in barns before. I didn't know exactly what they were or what they were for, but they're just what they sound like. They're these big hooks. You grab a hold of the end and you hook them into the hay or the straw and move it that way. So I needed something like that. So that was pretty easy to find. And then, as always, I always double check the time of death, to make sure that the time of death for the way I have things set up is going to work. And usually when I first start a book, I just have this idea of how it will begin, how it will start. And then once I've written quite a bit, a few chapters at least, then I start to go, oh, wait, is this going to work out time-wise? Because later I'm going to need this to happen, and it needs to happen on a Tuesday. And then this needs to happen on a Sunday because Ross won't be there. And so sometimes I have to go in and take stuff out that or move it to a different location because the timing won't work. Or I have to add stuff in. I need to make something happen or skip a couple of days, you know, so that it makes sense. I also have to look at the location. So when I haven't talked much about the setting for why I chose Wyoming and why I chose the area that I did in Wyoming. And that's a topic that I will be discussing at some point. But I created this imaginary place called Aspen Falls, but it needed to be close enough to a university where Jade could have worked, where she could have um, um, commuted every day to the university. So the real place exists. Laramie, Wyoming actually exists, and that's where the University of Wyoming is. There are not very many universities in Wyoming, and so I that really narrowed down the area where I could have her living. So it's really nice because then Cheyenne is further away from that. But it's like it's a trip that you can make, if you want to do some specialized shopping or something. And then Laramie is about 40 minutes from I created Aspen Falls. And it needed to be, a really small town so that Jade would have to sometimes go to Laramie for whatever. Next week, we'll talk about Murder of a Medium. And in that one, she has to go to Laramie to stock up on vegan delicacies for her guests. So she does trek over there sometimes, but I did need, and I wanted it to be a really gorgeous area. I wanted it to, be mountainous. So I had like a list of things that I needed. And so when I'm in this book, I had to do a lot of calculations between, okay, if this guy is coming from Cheyenne, how long would it take? And then to do the deed and then to go back, I had to make sure that all of that timing worked out so that it was realistic. So there were other things in there too that I had to research, but those were kind of the biggies. And it can be a little frustrating. I've been very fortunate. I mentioned last week that Wyoming is one of the very few states that doesn't require a PI to have a license and to go through a lot of like schooling type stuff and then have an apprenticeship. Some of the states are very, very rigorous. And honestly, it should be, but I guess Wyoming is so, the population is so small that I guess that they just haven't regulated that yet. But I didn't know that when I set the books in Wyoming. I just got lucky. But I have come across ideas that I really liked, murder setups or something that I really wanted to do, and it just wouldn't work because of the way I had it, the idea in my head just wouldn't work, wasn't feasible realistically. And people, readers aren't going to buy that if it's not realistic. I know that when I'm reading cozy mysteries, if it's too obvious or if it's too, I don't think that could happen. It's too far out there. A lot of times I'll just put the book down, especially if it's a new author that I haven't read before. So it's really important that authors do their research and find out the real deal before they write the book. So sometimes we have great ideas that we can't use, but I think we probably all keep a list of all that sort of thing because as technology develops and you might hear something else 2 years from now that puts a whole new spin on it in a way that you could make it work. So none of those ideas are ever lost. I always just keep this huge list of ideas, and I, eavesdrop on people's conversations, and I'm like, oh, that would be a great murder. Go write it down on my little notebook. So I'm always looking for new and creative ways to dazzle and surprise you guys and twists and turns to offer you. So that's it for today. I hope that when you come and watch the video that you will leave a comment and let us know what you're drinking. Ask any questions that you might have about the research that I did. Let me know any other topics that you might be interested in me talking about that you just leave them in the comments. I'd love to talk about whatever you guys want to hear about. I also put a link in the show notes. So if you haven't read A Time to Kiln, you can easily find that and read it. So until next week, I wish you all a wonderful day and hope to see you next week. Bye.